Well, it was June 17th, 2011, and miracle of miracles, we were actually all going on a 3-day group ride in the Laurentians, which is an area north of Montreal. Now, this never happens. I mean, organizing 5 guys who all live within a 500-kilometer radius with kids and renovations going on and differing work schedules make it almost impossible. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The story starts Friday morning. Okay, it is 20 to 9. We're supposed to meet here at 8:30.
So who among us is not here?
Who's not here?
Christopher?
Christopher. Charlie somehow made it all the way from Toronto on time.
You got in yesterday? Last night at midnight. It took me 10 hours to get in.
Nice whistle, Bill.
It is the Awesome Player's standard issue rape whistle.
And here we see the low center of gravity.
Yeah. I wonder if I can deal with that sometime. Maybe what I should do is move my bag more. Let's try that.
And of course, the mark.
The mark of shame.
The mark of shame from the X Challenge.
Where is the mark of shame?
Ah, the F800. New brake pads, new oil, new brake fluid. And for this trip, we are trying out the Wolfman Expedition dry saddlebags. Hey, it's just at the bottom. You're good.
Sure.
Yep, Joe's oil level is A1.
Should I add?
No. You're a former GS owner. Do you add oil if you can see oil in the window?
Yes.
Until she blows?
Well, more is always better.
Yes.
Well,
Good.
Unless more is bad.
In which case, a lot more is really... The last time we drained Joe's oil, it looked like a chocolate milkshake. So now we have added the fording breather. So unless Joe goes deeper than here on his gas tank, he's done.
Yeah.
You can also see the custom
What's that?
river crossing snorkel.
Fuck. That I like. How
And the
does
nice
that
thing about
work?
this is,
He just puts it on there?
yeah, Joe also sometimes needs a little time alone with this at night.
Pride of the fleet.
And here we see the new DR. Ooh, now to be clear, this is not, I repeat, the Douche Bike. Nice. Here we see Charlie's new tire, the Track Master. Are you the Track Master?
No. Do you think the local authorities will be okay with mine?
Dude, let me give you a wrapping bag. This setup sucks. But beautiful.
Work it. Buff it.
Right, please put it on.
Alright. Apply.
Okay. Gently, Joe, gently. To a perfect shine.
That says Saint-Michel. What was that?
That sounds like an HP2.
Hey!
Christopher is here! Oink!
Don't move, Chris! Let's adjust the camera when you're under fight. This is where the knobbies used to be.
Let's see it from the side to better appreciate.
What you need to do is appreciate
Is
the
it
backfire.
significant capping?
Ooh, for you, that's good.
It's better than the last one.
For Chris, this is a new tire. Look, it still has hairs on it. That's brand new, baby.
So where are the donuts?
So we finally got rolling towards the Forêt Waro, about an hour and a half away from Montreal. We stopped for a quick breakfast and Joe's 1150 fell over in the parking lot. I don't know if you guys remember, but those factory handguards would sometimes rotate, and when they rotated they would loosen the front master cylinder banjo bolt. Well, that was a quick fix with an Allen key, and then a quick hose down with some water to stop the brake fluid from eating all the paint off his bike.
Okay, let's avoid that in the future.
Then we noticed Cousin Charles's rear end was looking a little droopy, but luckily Chris came to the rescue with a technique he mastered as a single man.
I'm almost spent.
Charles, so you let everyone pump your bike?
Yeah.
And we finally hit the dirt and found ourselves in a small sand pit. You know, it's kind of funny to watch this now on video because it was very early in the season. I don't think Joe had been out at all. This would have been Cousin Charles, one of his first off-road events. So everybody's riding around very gingerly. Now at the back of the sandpit we found this interesting looking trail leading off to who knows where. And this actually turned into a great ATV trail, which would be perfect for a bunch of guys on heavy bikes who are feeling a little rusty. You know, we came across a few simple obstacles and nothing major. Then we got to a little culvert where, you know, the lack of suspension on the 1150 was a problem. You know, if he just drives over something like that, he just smashes the crap out of his skid plate. So we gave Joe a little push, and then the rest of the players glided over this little pipe without too much drama. Here we see Cousin Charles. He's doing really well for kind of his first big day out. And then we continued down the trail, and of course, like a lot of these trails that are great, at some point it ended up being a dead end. You know, it's always fun to watch 5 guys on silly bikes try to turn around with most of us kind of, you know, balancing on our tiptoes. Chris had a little tumble, but luckily Joe caught it on his GoPro, so it didn't go to waste. Cousin Charles had also dumped the X Challenge, and I headed back to help him pick it up. We try to help Charles with that kind of stuff because he's got a back problem. So we reversed direction and headed back down the same trail. We got to the same culvert and splashed across, and here we see Chris. And then it was Joe's turn, and once again, you know, his bike is probably an inch or so lower than it should be because of the sagging suspension. So these kind of minor obstacles turn out to be a real pain in the butt. And then of course, if you do have to stand on your tippy toes and muscle the bike through these things, the thing is so heavy that it's really exhausting. You'll notice that later on in the video there's a few times I could see where we'd finish a trail section and you could tell Joe had you know, exerted a lot more energy than the rest of us to get down that same piece of trail.
Back up a bit. Okay, ready? Give her. Easy peasy.
So we retraced our steps and turned left at a junction we had passed earlier. It was at this point when we were finally hitting the trails and all of us were there and all the weeks of phone calls and emails and everything was coming together, and you were actually riding down this super nice trail, and when you looked up ahead of you there were all of your buddies on their bikes, and it finally sinks in, this is going to be awesome. And then this trail turned into more of a black earth kind of path through the forest. Joe was in front of me when he hit a really greasy spot and he just lost it. Anyways, I think Joe's crash is probably worth watching a second time in super slow-mo. We can also hear Joe's in-camera audio here.
This looks slippery. Oh no. Oh, I think I'm gonna make it. Oh no, this is gonna hurt. Oh, I gotta get a lighter bike.
I rode through it much slower, and that stuff was just like Teflon.
You okay?
Now, as much fun as it is to watch someone crash, you always do worry initially that they might get hurt, and you can never tell. Sometimes the little tiny tip overs are the ones where someone's foot gets pinned or something. But anyways, Joe hopped up and limped it off. So we picked up the heavy beast and assessed the damage. I rode it over to level ground for Joe to give him a few minutes to walk it off. And then, of course, as part of the Awesome Players ongoing safety program, we revisited the crash site so we could see the greasy slide marks, and it also looked like he might have hit a little rock there with his front tire.
So, Joe comes up the hill, gets loose, hits rocks, crashes. Nice.
Then we, of course, did one of our famous on-site repairs where you can't even tell the bike was damaged. We continued for quite a while down this track until it finally dumped us out at a small sandy patch next to a paved road. And that was where Chris spotted an interesting looking trail in the distance.
Look at that.
So we decided to take a 5-minute break, and it was at this point that Henrik got his hands on my camcorder and started shooting.
Try to all fit in. Here we are in this picturesque environment in Forêt Loireau, the Awesome Players Motorcycle Club's first outing with all members present this year. And so let's introduce the members. Christopher.
Hey, no last names. This is going on the web.
Yeah.
Okay, let's introduce the members.
Charles Bill, Riley Bill, Joe Bill.
Chris Crash. Is that it?
At least use the right one.
Well, which one was it? Sleazebag.
Sleazebag, sorry.
Sleazebag Chris. He is, what are you, your treasurer? Motsling. What's your, and Christopher, please say what your function is in the club.
Dead weight.
Yeah. I don't care.
Ballast.
And next to him we see Uncle Charles. Uncle Charles, your function in the club.
Where's my function in the club? Oh, I was
Keeper of the Constitution.
Keeper of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker?
You were, that's right. Christopher was Mr. Speaker. Joe.
Joe was the treasurer.
MOTOJOE was the treasurer. And
under investigation. Currently under
Riley T, the president. And of course the cameraman, Sergeant at Arms.
AKA Heinrich.
That's right.
I think we should have whistle inspection. I don't have mine.
out. What? I didn't bring it.
What? Rape whistle check.
Check.
Check. Joe. Okay. Chris? Chris wants to be raped.
Well, I guess we know who wants to be in the barrel this weekend.
Uncle Charles?
He's furiously looking for it. Charles came directly here from football practice.
That body armor gives Uncle Charles that that hunchback of the Notre Dame.
Don't you have the whistle suppository? 'Cause I heard some whistling on the trail there.
It gives Charles that certain je ne veux pas.
That shouldn't take the jacket off, to be honest, right? It's just gonna end up tearing if I do go down.
Well, we eventually got everybody loaded up, and then we were off to find this trail that Chris had seen off in the distance. Now, we didn't have too far to go to get started. We basically, the trail we were on ended, we went down this paved road about 100 yards, and then we could see a trail heading off in a hydro line. At this point, Henrik was out in front, and he thought it looked pretty mucky, but Chris, who couldn't see anything, thought it looked great.
Go!
So we all watched as the guy with the smallest, lightest bike with the best tires headed off. And it didn't look good. It kind of looked like he barely made it. But just because something's a bad idea doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. So off I went, and it became quite apparent that this rut was too deep for the 800. So I tried to bypass on the left here, and it's hard to see, but there's a bit of a mound here, and I knew I was going to have to get back in the rut, and I knew as soon as I got back in the rut I was going to get stuck. And past experience has told me that before you go crazy trying to get through some mud hole, you better find out how far it goes.
Just want to see what's up ahead before we go crazy.
Oh, Henrik came through there.
Yeah, but what's in that little low spot? What's it look like? I know, but what does it look like down there? How does it look?
Then Chris's bike started acting up.
That didn't sound good. Uh-oh. Hey. I got no juice. I don't know. I got a little thunk and then nothing. Who's got the jumper cables? Ah.
Henrik! Chris's bike is dead. You better come back.
Well, we jerked around with the side stand safety switch and the clutch safety switch and all that, and then Chris decided to give it another try, and it worked. Time to go back and pick up my 800. And even if we got my 800 through, we didn't think the 1150 stood much of a chance with less ground clearance.
See, I don't think you're going to get through here, Bill. No. What if we go, like, totally through left? We're going to need muscle. Yeah.
Now I've left this sequence here a little long, just to really show what happens when you make a really bad decision with a big heavy bike in mud.
Keep going. This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna bypass this whole shit on the side. Oh, you're wedged in, eh?
That's beaver shit.
The muscle here.
Okay, go! Now we're gonna have to lift. I don't want to be coming back.
No, it's... Okay, go. Go!
We're gonna have to lift it.
Nah, give it one more try.
Hold the clutch in.
Got it.
There's no way out of here.
No, you're gonna go on the side. That's what I'm gonna do. Where the foliage is.
Now we'd make a little bit of progress, and then the rut would get just deep enough that the 800 would bottom out and the foot pegs would snag the edges of the groove.
Keep going, keep going.
After about 10 minutes, I finally made it to the little piece of high ground when Chris discovered something interesting.
You mean there was a trail right here? Oh, for fuck's sake.
Then we went looking for Henrik.
You both.
You didn't think this was a bad idea when you said it was all great and it looked wonderful?
Well, it looked like it was just a 2-track with some water in it.
No, I could tell from the other side of the hill this was bad.
At times like this, having a little piece of rope is a godsend. Later we'd call this rope the douche rope, but for the moment it was just known as the rope.
Put the string through, not the hook. And you can just hook that on.
I think it's gonna be easier to definitely go forward.
Pull it forward and then bring it back after?
Yeah, get it up onto this island and then we'll go.
Island.
Alright.
Yeah.
We're going to get it up onto this island and then we'll turn it around.
All right.
Okay, yeah, someone's going to have to get it running.
Running?
Yeah.
Luckily, there was kind of a little island of semi-firm ground in the middle of this swamp, so we got all the bodies together on it to pull, and with the motor running for a little extra help, we yanked as hard as we could. And eventually, the old DR was yanked out of the muck.
I love my rope.
Ride it out.
And with a little help from Cousin Charles and Chris, Henrik was able to get the old DR back out of the swamp without going through the spot that had been all chewed up by the ATVs. By now everybody was huffing and puffing pretty good, and Chris's trail we'd seen off the distance would have to wait for another day. Now I like this shot because it sounds like Joe's wearing snow pants. And in the distance you can see me walking the trail to see if we could find a bypass that wouldn't involve going back the same way we came in. Henrik on the mighty DR.
Nice job.
Well, after a rest, we headed off back down the trail we'd come down that morning, and we started with Chris was out in front, and then Henrik, Joe, Cousin Charles here, and I was in the rear, and I decided to stay back here. It's always nicer to get some footage of your buddies. And then I thought I'd reel in Henrik and try to get a few shots of Henrik. Meanwhile, out front, Chris was having a nice ride on the old HP2. This was actually quite a rocky little uphill climb. Never looks that way on the old GoPro. Here I am following Henrik. Now, we did come across a few other trail users, guys on ATVs, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, you could really fly down certain sections of this trail, but you just never know when you come around that corner what's going to be there. Here we're on board with Joe, going through a little rocky section. Now Joe was having to keep his speeds pretty moderate because his suspension was really done, and I think the rear shock in particular was just totally burnt out at this point. Here we see Henrik on the mighty DR. This too is actually quite a steep hill, it just doesn't look like it. Always nice to have a little chance to rinse out the old 800. Falling in behind Chris here on the HP2. Always interesting that because Chris is a freak of nature, the old HP2 doesn't look that big when he's riding it. Meanwhile, behind us, Joe and Cousin Charles were having a little meeting.
A lot easier the second time. I hope they didn't turn off over there.
Now this is the section where Joe had crashed earlier, and I'm not sure what this stuff was. It looks fine here on video. These grooves were actually a lot deeper than they seem. But the stuff was incredibly slippery, and I saw Chris actually get the wiggles a few times where it looked like he was going to crash. We'd been riding quite a while, so we decided to take a little break.
Oh, that was creepy.
Yeah, those little Mongols.
At one point, right past where Joe crashed, you almost lost.
Yeah, I know. I gotta say, the steering damper on shit like that makes a huge difference.
Well, at one point in third, as I was trying to catch up to you, I hit something, and I just felt the steering go.
And then lock though, yeah.
I just wanted to go, and it didn't. And I was like, ooh, that was good.
Because that would have been a...
That would have been a turn.
Yeah. Shall we wait for them, or shall we...
Yeah.
Wait, eh?
We gotta find some shade, though.
Yeah.
Now you can see here as I try to pull forward, it looks great. And as soon as you try to put some power down, that stuff would just break away and was really greasy. It was actually getting a little bit hot too, so we decided to pull over in the shade and wait for the rest of the players to show up. Meanwhile, at the back of the pack, Joe had caught up to Henrik, and they decided to take a little break as well.
Yeah. Where's the boys? Okay.
Now here we see Joe coming down that same section, and once again, the old 1150 didn't like that greasy stuff. He actually did a 180 there. He's facing the wrong way down the trail now.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I have to avoid these ruts. And then my hand hit the gas. That's what saved me, because otherwise I would have piled it. Woo! That was unfucking believable. Oh, I covered it. That was an amazing crash. And when I lost my balance, I hit gas.
Joe's got a TKC 80 on the front 19-inch wheel on the 1150GS, so it's not quite as aggressive a tire as the rest of us are running. And this is also an abject lesson in when you're in a rut on one of these big bikes, you're better off just staying in the rut. Now I think we should watch that again in super slow-mo. Let's go to Joe's camera with his helmet audio.
Man, my technique's really improved. This is where I crashed last time, but I'm a master now. My baby, my 1150 baby.
Sorry for the bad Joe impression, but I don't really do voices. Well, Joe dusted himself off and they started heading back down the trail. And meanwhile, Chris and I hadn't seen them for quite a while, so we had turned around to come back and see what was happening.
I did a spectacular 180. No, it just came to rest on the crotch bar.
And then we were all together again, and we started heading back. We got to a few junctions where we took a different route than we had in the morning. Ran into a couple of guys on ATVs again. Not a lot of traffic on these trails. I'm always amazed we can go out for a whole day and pretty much see nobody. Then we saw a sign that basically said this trail would lead us to St. Combe. And we decided, since we were into the afternoon here, that might be a nice place to stop. And then we came across some yahoos in a pickup who I think might have had a few beers. This was a really nice kind of road for these big bikes. Now if you watch this next clip, you'll see Joe's rear tire hop over this big rock, right there. And then there was this wicked grinding noise. Now let's look at it from Joe's camera and listen for the great noise it makes. Now I guess what had happened is a rock had gone around inside the fender and ripped off his fender extension.
Mud Flap's history, Bill. The rock sucked it up. The fender at least didn't break.
Well, the fender extender and mud flap were history, but the factory fender was fine. And of course, the awesome players always pack out their trash. So we headed off once again, heading towards St. Combe, and yeah, this was just a great old road here. You know, we were trying to keep speeds semi-sane here, just because we had started running into a little more traffic, and you didn't want to come drifting around one of these corners into the grill of a pickup. And then the forest road turned into this nicely groomed gravel road. I actually find these gravel roads sometimes harder to ride on because on the hard-packed earth, you have pretty good traction. On these things, you keep hitting these deep spots in the gravel, and it always feels a little uncomfortable. I pulled over to have a little look at my GPS.
My shocks feel like they totally collapsed.
And then the rest of the crew caught up, and we headed off. And I think at this point, everybody, you know, we were well into the afternoon at this point, and I think everybody was getting ready to have a cold beer. We hit the pavement, and it was kind of nice to end the day with a little bit of a twisty Laurentian road. And then we rolled into beautiful St. Côme, and the first place we saw that had umbrellas and served beer, we pulled in. Now the plan for the evening was to have a few drinks, find a place for supper, and then go to bed. Now you see this silver Taurus here. Well, we stayed at this bar and we had a few drinks, and then the waitress finished her shift, and being a kind old sort, she actually piled us all into this car and took us on a bar tour of every establishment within about a 20-mile radius of this town. And then we ended up back here and ended up closing the place down at about 3:30 in the morning. So let's just jump forward to the next morning, and you tell me if you think Henrik had a big night.
I think I turn off the camera now.
It is the morning after the night before.
Vive la résistance.
Charlie, how are you this morning?
I think I'm okay.
Here we see the compound. Razor wire.
Downtown Beirut.
Barrier. Hefty padlock to protect our poor bikes from the locals. Here we see Joe. Let's do that again. Here we see Douche. Here we see.
Le Douche.
Here we see
Please,
Joe.
little respect.
Joe, any damage to your bike yesterday?
Nope. Primo.
Oh fuck! Someone locked the steering.
What happened to your front? Your front fender looks shorter than it used to be.
I didn't know this bike can do that.
That was an optional piece of kit, anyways.
Did you do any? You didn't do any falling yesterday?
No, that I know of.
No, I didn't think so. Were you overserved last night?
Overserved.
Somehow I got too many Red Bulls. That's what's messing me up.
Chris, any dreams about half-inflated footballs last night?
No, and I slept like a baby.
Hey! Charge!
Well, we decided to leave the picturesque little town of St. Côme. I must say that we were feeling a little worse for wear. And it was the hotel we stayed at was a little bit puzzling. It had this rather odd architecture.
What kind of architecture would you call that?
What kind of? I think that is early 2x6. I don't know what that is. And then we decided that if we wanted to survive, we'd better get some breakfast.
I'm okay as long as I don't bend over.
Words to live by, folks. So once we all finally got packed up and moving, we decided to head to breakfast in the nearby town of Saint-Donat, which was about 20 minutes away. And the road between St. Côme and Saint-Donat was this beautiful 2-lane twisty road, and despite our condition, we enjoyed it quite a bit. And you know, our only objective now was to find another place to stay for Saturday night, get rid of all of our equipment, make the bikes lighter, and then go out and have a big day of off-roading. Well, with full bellies and all of our gear safely stowed in a nearby hotel, Joe and I decided that you know, a good place to start would be this old GPS route that we had from probably 10 years ago, when we had gone on an organized GPS ride on our KLRs. So we got off the main road and started heading down towards this old hotel, which was now closed, and we knew that right from that hotel there was access to this great hydroline trail. And sure enough, there was the trail just where we left it. So I headed in first. That's me up in front. This is Chris's camera. And this trail was really nice, and given how we were all feeling, it was kind of nice to get off to a relatively gentle start. Here we're on board Joe on the 1150GS, and you can see that this trail skirts the edge of a lake for a couple of kilometers, and then after that the trail would get a little bit tougher. Well, Chris and I got to the first little hard spot here, and this is actually quite a loose, rocky, steep uphill climb. It never looks like that on the old Gopro. And we made it up without too much drama, and then once we got up here, you can see the hydro line goes for quite a while. We decided to wait for the rest of the players.
I like this a lot.
Now Joe and the rest of the boys were proceeding at a little more leisurely pace. And Chris and I were kind of planning out the day on the GPS. And Joe was being pretty conservative here about his speed through these greasy spots after yesterday's crashes.
They didn't take the wrong turn. No, they didn't take a turn.
We'd been waiting quite a while, and we started wondering if maybe somebody had had a breakdown or a crash. But in actuality, Joe and the rest of the guys were just proceeding at a little more leisurely pace. You know, I'm not sure who was feeling the worst this morning, but nobody certainly was, you know, performing at 100% at this point. Now, quite a bit of time had passed, so Chris and I were starting to get more and more convinced that something had happened, so we decided to head back to the trail, figuring it was probably that last rocky hill climb.
Somebody must have bailed. It's the ruts that are killing them.
But then in the distance, we heard the wheezings of an 1150GS climbing a hill. Here we see Joe getting up on the pegs and making it up with no problem.
You take the lead, I'll bring up the rear.
So after a little break, we headed off. Chris in front, followed by Joe, and then Henrik on the mighty DR, and Cousin Charles on his first real off-road day.
That's probably the roughest spot, I think. Stay on the peg!
Meanwhile, up ahead, Lead Elements had come up against our first obstacle, a washed-out bridge. Now, on another day, where everyone hadn't had 3 hours sleep and an incredibly large bar tab, we may have tackled this obstacle a little differently, but today we decided to err on the side of caution and build ourselves some sort of a little ramp here. For a brief moment, we thought we might have been able to do a bypass here on the right-hand side, so of course we sent in Henrik to check it out.
Send in the TR.
But it looked like it was going to be more trouble than it was worth, so we decided to get back to fabricating our ramp.
And here we see our crack team of field experts rigging up a makeshift bridge.
The field engineers.
The field engineers at work. Riley, will this solution hold the bikes?
We should send over the heaviest bike first, Joe, just to make sure.
Right.
Or do you want to, you know, weaken the bridge? Yeah.
Well, I have another idea. We could just throw down your bike to create a makeshift bridge and drive across that. How about that?
That's a damn good idea.
Huh? It's also yellow, so it's very visible.
Safety yellow. It is the preferred motto of
Guillain. Yeah. Uncle Charles, would you move a little bit if you please?
And within a few minutes, our makeshift bridge was ready.
I will. Piece of cake. I'll go first.
And Chris volunteered to go first.
Chris is getting ready to drive the, well, push the HP2 across. I hear it's cracking. Okay. And it made it across.
Next would be Henrik, so we had to get his beret on.
Are you gonna ride over with a wheelie? See, now a real rider would pop a wheelie and hop that gap.
You could just drive over this pretty easily.
Oh yeah, in fact it would probably be easier.
Less chance of crashing.
Yeah. Henrik, I think you should drive over it.
Drive over.
It's a lot easier.
I'm gonna pause the video here for a second because it was something I never noticed while I was there. But if you look at the video coming up, you'll see that Cousin Charles almost falls over backwards into the river, and Joe is already doubled over with his hands on his knees. Because at this point, the temperature's already getting quite warm, and I think everybody was pretty much sweating pure booze.
There's only one thing. I would have to push from the other side.
Yes, exactly. That's what I had to do. Oh, fuck, the flies are nasty. There we go. Henrik is working his way across. Watch your feet, Henrik.
I got. Oh, oh, oh. You're good?
Yep.
Did you wet yourself a little there, Henrik?
I was scared.
What do you have to say about this?
I think the strong guy should be up there, and the little wimpy guy like me should be running the
back.
cam.
Should be videotaping.
Yeah.
You take it.
There's Nick.
Is it rolling?
Yes, roll.
Get your finger out of the picture, Charles.
It is.
It's the one on the left side there.
Then it was time to get Joe's 1150 across.
Steady cam.
Now you just can't help watching this. You know, I'm editing this almost a year and a half after this weekend, and just seeing, you know, if we'd all had a good night's sleep, we would have been across this bridge in about 5 minutes. And I think we wasted about 45 minutes here.
Charles, how's your hangover?
It's diminished significantly.
Physical exertion does that.
Now, Cousin Charles has a history of back problems, so we sent Henrik to go get his bike.
Do you entrust your bike to the Eastern European?
Not really.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't trust my helmet to the Eastern European.
The one in the poison ivy?
Get on the other side, Henrik.
It's always entertaining watching him.
Yeah.
You go kick this thing. Notice there's no tire tracks.
And without too much excitement, we got the old X Challenge 650 across. Then, last but not least, was the trusty 800. Notice my excellent technique here for getting the side stand up and coming around the other side. Now, I've done over 20 videos of our little motorcycle club, and this morning there was more burping and sighing than I've ever heard.
You don't want to ride it?
And once again, with 4 bodies and about half a brain, we managed to get the 800 across.
Hey, careful! I got it. Go. Gas!
Well, a couple of hand claps to get our video camera synchronized, and we were ready to get rolling again. So I decided to head off ahead because I wanted to get some videotape of the boys coming towards me. And I came to this really gnarly, rocky hill climb. You saw me hit that big rock back there. That was one of those moments where a steering damper is really nice. So I thought I'd position myself at the top of this hill, and I figured I'd get some good footage. Here you can see Joe in the lead with Chris following him. Now the best way to get up this hill is probably in second gear, but on Joe's bike with basically no suspension, if he tries to go too fast, he just gets bounced right off the trail, and of course if you go too slow, the tire throws a rock, and then you're stuck. So luckily Chris comes to the rescue.
Yeah. All right.
And then the fun begins. Now, if you really want to get rid of a hangover, the best thing you can do is try to push a 500-pound motorcycle with a 200-pound guy on it up a mountainside. Oh yeah, and it's hot, and there's bugs.
I got you. You ready?
You can see here that Joe has kind of short legs, so even though the suspension is pretty much crushed on this machine, he's still on his tippy toes, which isn't helping.
You know what? I was going to say just push it, but no, keep going.
And if you don't succeed, throw more bodies at it. So now we got Henrik entering the fray.
Back a little tiny bit because you're stuck on it.
And finally, even I had to get involved, so here I am pulling out my piece of rope. It's just a piece of webbing with a carabiner on it and a loop, so you can wrap it around the fork tubes. And then with Charles and I pulling, and Chris and Henrik pushing, off we went.
Are you in gear? You're not in gear. Put it in gear.
And of course it helps if the bike is in gear.
Keep going.
And eventually we got it onto this flatter spot that actually had some traction.
Go to the right. Go,
so we disconnected the rope and gave him a push.
Go. Okay, don't let him go back there.
And then we started pushing again. Now at this point, the only thing you could hear over the engine and the spinning tire, the 1150, was Joe's breathing. He was getting pretty tuckered out.
Okay, hold on, stop. Let's take a break. Woo. Holy shit.
So we decided to bring in Joe's stunt double. And here we see Chris, who, with a total disregard for Joe's clutch and the security of his bike, made it. So then we decided we better have a little briefing with Charles on what would be the best route. And we kind of walked it out with him and formulated a plan.
You want to come straight up here? This is when you cut right.
But first, it would be Chris's turn to try and get the HP2 up the hill.
Go back down, Bill. Get up on those pegs, Bill.
Here, Chris showed some poor judgment by not running over Joe. Easy. Then it was Henrik on the mighty DR.
That's how you do it, baby. Fucking made it look easy. Well done.
That left only Cousin Charles on the X Challenge.
Gas! Whoa! You okay? Are you sure? Take a minute.
So, of course, we have to take a look at that in super slow-mo. If you look at one point, the entire motorcycle is in the air. Right here. I'm amazed he didn't break his leg there. Looking at it in slow motion, it looked so much worse. But Cousin Charles was fine, or as fine as he normally is. And the X Challenge got a few scrapes, and that was it. So the boys helped him pick up the machine, and we let Cousin Charles kind of shake it off. And then he got right back on the horse, and off he went. And standing up on the pegs, and no problem.
That looks bad.
Okay, Henrik, let's trade bikes for a bit. What? Let's trade bikes for a bit. I'm done. Stick a fork in me.
At this point, Joe tried to convince Henrik to change bikes for the next section. Henrik wasn't biting. The next little challenge was this really steep, rocky downhill. You can see it's also chewed up because people coming uphill tend to spin the wheels so the rocks are loose. On these, I find it's best for me just to keep it in first gear, try to stay off the brakes as much as possible, and if you know you have a little runoff area at the end like you do here, it doesn't really matter if you carry a bit of speed down to the bottom of the hill.
It's going to be nasty. Imagine trying to climb this. That is a steep hill. It does not look it, but that is steep.
So we waited for the rest of the boys to show up, and here's Joe eyeballing the descent. Now of course he's stopped here, and once you're stopped it's really tricky to get going because you've got to transition from sitting to getting up on the pegs. And right now the wheels are just skidding along on those loose rocks. So we sent Chris up to give him a hand. The worst part about this is not the riding, it's the walking up and down these hills to help people. Now this is where the difference between a 300-pound bike and a 500+ pound bike is very apparent. Joe finally made it down. And then Henrik kind of got out of shape on this one, and then he just decided he was going to walk it down, which takes a lot more energy than riding it down. Next was Cousin Charles, recovered from his earlier crash. You can see he's skidding the rear tire.
Baby. Piece of piss.
We were really hoping this wasn't a dead end because we did not want to have to go up this hill.
Good job!
That is so much less work.
It's so much easier to ride it out.
After a little break, we continued down the hydro line and it got a little more muddy. This is actually a little steep hill climb here, and yeah, I just drove off the edge there. I'm not quite sure. I think everybody was getting a little tired and a little punchy at this point. But with a little push, I was off and running again. And Joe was already pretty much figured out this was going to be a rough patch for him. Meanwhile, up ahead, there was another one of these long, steep, rocky hill climbs. So here we are on board with me on the 800, second gear, and no problem, made it to the top. Meanwhile, at this point, Joe swapped in his stunt double, and with Joe and Henrik pushing, they managed to get the 1150 out of its rut and pointed the right direction. Joe jumped back on, and with Chris pulling on the crash bars and Henrik pushing on the trunk, they started to make a little headway. But at this point, Joe had all the strength of a wet noodle and slightly less personality. So Chris jumped back on, and with a little landscaping and some muscle, they got the 1150 sorted out. You know, sometimes, you know, you're better off just rolling back down the hill section to get to a little better traction spot, as opposed to just trying to chew your way up. It's hard to see here in the footage, but there is a little bit of a groove they're in. And then with the boys pushing and Chris's long legs, they got the 1150 out of there. Then we get to see Cousin Charles on the X Challenge, no problem. Here's Cousin Charles on the next rocky uphill section. Standing on the pegs, even throttle, no drama. Nice. Meanwhile, down below, Henrik had gotten a little sideways at that same spot. Chris and Joe gave him a hand to get the mighty DR, onto some level ground. And off went Henrik. I think he was actually sober by this point.
Stay to the left!
Here we see Henrik on that hill climb.
Yes! Stay to the left. Okay, you're good. Go right.
Nice.
It's gonna be ugly. I'll give it a go.
Joe wasn't overly optimistic, but he decided to give it a shot anyways. This could be ugly. Now you get into kind of a vicious circle here because the more tired you get, the more mistakes you make, the more you fall down, the more energy you expend picking up the bike and muscling it. And then at some point you're just done.
Give her! Oh.
And I think this is a prime example of that at this point. Joe, he is pretty much finished. Meanwhile, we all missed it, but Chris was coming up on the HP2, missed my helmet.
Tire track's only an inch away from my helmet.
There's some dirt on your GoPro.
What? Is this about the sweat? Is this about the sweat?
This is about the sweat.
Now about the sweat is because I'd wrung out my sweaty hat on Chris earlier and he was a little miffed. We were all happily pulling Joe's bike up the road when we realized the motor was off. So Chris jumped on and got her going, and it's amazing how the addition of 85 horsepower can make pulling a bike up a hill a lot easier.
Baby!
As you can see up ahead here, Joe's having trouble even standing up.
I told you, unless you're cursing by the end of it, you're not having fun.
Then it was time to get the HP2 up the hill.
Okay, you're good.
I'm giving Chris a little push here. Now, if you want to lose your front teeth or get your eyes poked out, stand behind an HP2 when it's trying to climb a rocky hill with Chris on the gas. But once he got rolling and got up on the pegs, no problem.
Now that's burnt clutch smell. Well, you shouldn't have been standing there.
He's got a bald tire. He's doing the best he can for you.
Exactly. Oh, looks like it's flat for a while.
Smell that.
Yeah, burnt clutch.
Oh, look at that. There's a dry clutch in here, isn't there?
A little clutch slippage never hurt anybody.
At this point, we are one pretty sorry bunch.
I didn't realize there'd be so much walking in this motorcycle sport you guys have. Oh,
We gotta be closer to the end than the beginning.
right.
Maybe. Good news is we can't turn around.
So we got rolling once again, and now the trail had kind of flattened out for a good little section here. And, you know, coming down this little downhill at the bottom, there was a bit of a culvert with a relatively steep little ditch. And what's interesting is, you know, how you approach these obstacles is so dependent on your frame of mind and your energy level. You know, there's lots of days I know you'd come up to something like this and we'd all just blast over it and it wouldn't be a problem. But today, everybody was feeling so rough and all the pushing and pulling had made everybody pretty whipped that all of a sudden you get too cautious and it makes these kind of obstacles even more difficult. Here we see Henrik getting across. The smaller bikes had no problem, nor the HP2.
Hey, Joe, wait a minute.
But we kind of figured Joe would need a helping hand. So once again, the lack of ground clearance on the 1150GS, you know, makes it pretty much impossible for him to just fly over that. I mean, I guess theoretically possible if he just gunned it across, but this was not the day for that to happen. Joe was not being his usual aggressive self today on the gas. Then we see Chris climbing the next hill climb. And he has one of his rare little falls. He gives the thumbs up, he's okay. Nearly gets run over by Henrik. Finds his mirror, and of course, the awesome players always pack out their trash. Chris coming up here, no problem.
Oh no.
The fucking mirror snapped.
Oh, the mount?
Yeah. Broke off inside.
Yeah.
Flush.
That's perfect. You just drill and top it. That's what I did.
Oh yeah?
Worked even better than factory.
Oh, that's right.
He's never gonna make it like that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. This is where someone gets hurt. He ain't gonna make it.
Drive it up.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah?
Just a thought, but before Joe gets any farther up,
Yeah?
you wanna go down and ride it up?
Yeah.
Just roll it. Wait!
At this point, we were starting to get worried that Joe might hurt himself. He was getting so exhausted. So we sent Chris down to ride the bike up, but Joe decided to give it a shot. You know, we weren't quite sure where this trail led out or how much farther we had to go. I mean, the GPS track we had was about 10 years old, so we weren't sure, you know, somebody had closed off the trail farther ahead or what was going on. But Joe got it going and held it together and made it to the top. I think Chris got a pretty good workout. Then it was time for Cousin Charles. Makes it look easy.
Pulled Chucky. Wheel up in the air, full lock, boom.
Slow, we can do that slow, man.
Yeah, I got it on film this time.
And then Chris wasn't sure he had it on film.
Is the are the numbers supposed to be flashing? Okay. Yeah.
Hey, we forgot to watch that crash, so let's go to the CHRISCAM. Hear what Chris has to say in super slow-mo.
Man, this HP2's awesome. I don't understand why the other guys ride those shitty bikes. Pushing them up these hills is really taking it out of me. I think I'll just lay down here and have a little nap.
That sounds more like the guy from those Saw movies than it does Chris, but what the hell? And then the trail actually got quite nice and easy, and we rode on this kind of stuff for quite a while. There was still the occasional little section that was a bit more challenging. Here's a nice little uphill, but nothing like the stuff that was right under the hydro line. Here we see Henrik on the mighty DR doing one of these climbs, and then our little group decided to pull over here and wait for Cousin Charles and Joe to show up.
Yeah.
It had really turned out to be a super nice day. The weather was warm, the bugs weren't crazy bad, so after we reformed and took a minute to let everybody catch their breath, we headed off again. Chris and Joe were bringing up the rear, and Joe came up to this muddy spot here, and once again, you know, if you got to kind of have some momentum to get through this stuff, and Joe you know, came up to one of these little holes, and instead of splashing through it here like Chris was doing, he rolled in here real slow and had a log kind of jammed up against the rear wheel.
You wanna push?
Now what's kind of neat when you got a bunch of guys who've been hanging out and riding together for a while is if you look at this sequence right here, Joe's running the clutch and Chris is running the gas, and they got the bike out without saying a word. So Joe and Chris got moving again, but up at the front we were kind of wondering where they were.
That's not good. There was nothing there, was there? Tricky? But I think Joe is just, he's on empty. Bang.
Bomb through it.
Chris was doing his best to keep Joe moving, but I don't think Joe was in a bomb through it kind of mood at this point. But eventually they met us at the intersection.
Is this the road?
Well, I think according to the route, we should have stayed on the hydro line a little bit longer.
I don't know.
But anyways, it looks
I don't
like
think that my route is right because it's been telling me to go backwards for.
because there's a sign there that says turn right.
Okay.
So I think that's the way we go.
My route's been telling me to go the opposite direction we've been going the entire time.
So
I might have loaded it backwards or something.
turn right here, Bill. Keep going. Unless you want to take a break. You want to take a break or keep going?
So off we went. I ended up taking the lead here, and we started off on this relatively well-maintained road. And then that kind of became a little two-track with the grass, hump in the middle. And then we just ended up pretty much bushwhacking here at this point on top of what looked like an old beaver dam, which led us to this clearing, which, as Chris and I are looking down here on the ground, is just full of poison ivy. So we backtracked, and poor Joe got back to the last intersection, and down he went again in the soft stuff. Now there was no way Joe was picking up that 1150 by himself, but Henrik was riding right behind Joe, so he stopped, and using the secret Central European techniques he'd learned in Hungary, he got the bike up and got Joe on his way. Meanwhile, the rest of us were having a little break up at the front.
This is awesome, though. These trails are awesome. No, you're dead.
And, when the GoPro batteries are all dead and everybody's this tired and it's late in the afternoon, it's time to go home.
Yeah. I'm getting Jello legs.
So now our only objective was to find our way out of there.
Which way? I think we should go that way.
So, these roads weren't on the GPS, but we kind of guesstimated which ones were taking us in the right direction. And this was a really nice road, and then we started running into a little more ATV traffic. So we kind of figured, we hadn't seen anybody for hours and hours. This was probably a good sign. And then we got to a real road with real signs. So we knew that that cold beer was not too far away.
Fuck are we?
It's always nice to see how someone else's bike performs. So here Chris is trying out the X Challenge. And cousin Charles, Chucky, was trying out the HP2. Seemed to like it. Now listen for the rev limiter coming up here. Nice. He also sprayed his own bike with rocks. Chris was having trouble finding second gear on Chuck's bike with his flippers because I guess the shifter got bent. I think Charles liked it.
Enough power for you?
Yeah, I could use a little, like 50 more horses.
Then I took the old X Challenge for a spin. Yeah, it's a pretty nice bike. I like that little Rotax 650 in it. Henrik was thinking about the X Challenge as a second bike, but I think his legs would have to get a little bit longer. And then it was on this well-groomed gravel road, which turned into this little paved road, which turned into a main paved road. And then we didn't even drive up to our rooms. We just parked right here as close to the bar as possible. And as usual, we normally do no videotaping at night once the festivities begin. But after several hours at the bar, we made an exception. There was a swamp behind the hotel, and it seemed a shame to let it go to waste, so we engineered a competition where you had to run through the swamp, grab a beer, and then give it to your partner to chug it. So here we see Chris with the advantage with those long legs, Henrik doing his best to keep up. Now there's two beers sitting on this log. Chris grabs both beers. Henrik, though, not to be outdone, grabs them, and then they have a little mud wrestling match here. Now one thing to remember is, if you're going to do this, maybe take your BlackBerry out of your pocket, which Henrik forgot to do. Now at the end of the swamp, Joe and I are waiting to get our beers because we have to chug them, and that's when you know who the winner is. That water was disgusting. Now if you look here, you can actually see Joe pour some of his beer on the ground, the little cheater. Joe claimed victory, but I'll let you guys be the judge. Anyways, despite our best intentions, we once again closed down the bar at around 3 o'clock in the morning. So everyone was moving a bit slow, but Henrik looked better than yesterday.
Has Henrik cleaned his eyes yet? Were you overserved last night?
Repeatedly.
Then it was time for a quick damage assessment. Chris's mirror, Chris's broken turn signal, bent shifter on the G bike, which we fixed, a little bend in the skid plate, and a few little character marks on the fender. Joe's 1150 with the turn signal, and a few more scratches on the old crash guards. And then it was time to go home. This is now Sunday morning. Super nice day, a little highway blast, and then back to the burbs. Cousin Charles was heading back to Toronto. Henrik had headed back to Fort St. Eugene. And this ended another Awesome Players Off-Road Motorcycle Club adventure.